This overview video, I will be going over Barco's projector toolset and its newer features that are used with their pulse projectors. Let's create a new configuration. This will give us a blank instance of the toolset software. I'm going to call this one Demo. We can also create a configuration based off of a previous configuration, like a copy. I'm going to add a projector via the scan feature. This will reach out on the local network and find all compatible projectors. It searches the entire IP range, so be patient with it. A unique feature is that all of your projectors can have the exact same IP address, and the toolset will find the projectors based on their MAC address. Once you add them, you'll see them on the left-hand side in the configuration space. So in the configuration subtab, you have options to restore the connection, or even further, under selected device, you have properties, connect, or remove. In the properties, we can change the display name. Let's set it to demo UDM. We can change the type, enable, disable. If we go to the connection, we can change the IP address or do another device scan. In the decorator, we can change the position of the text and information on our configuration side, so we can enable device, lamp, device type, and our connection settings. You can see in the configurator that we now have our lamp status, projector model, and also the IP address. In the configuration menu, this is where you can also take and apply snapshots. A snapshot is like a preset where you can load a specific collection of settings to a projector configuration. We can also manually add projectors, whether they be mid-venue, large venue, extra large venue, or a new pulse projector. With these icons above the configurator, we can change how frequently the devices update, and we can also expand the log view to see if there are any messages or errors. Let's step over to the Generals tab. This is an overview tab where we can see things such as the model number, firmware version, serial number, and also quick toggle test patterns, on-screen display, shutter, and a power state. A nice feature is that pulse-enabled projectors, you can preview the inputs, but it's only a static image. You'll have to manually refresh it. The stats page gives us a higher level overview of what the projector is doing. We can see the laser runtime, the projector runtime, and the total system time. There's also meters for giving us the pressure, humidity, temperature, and current power voltage. We can also rescale these meters to get a better view. The Input tab is where we'll configure the inputs. We can choose which connector we're going to use, and then we can set the properties of that specific connector, including the resolution. If we click this button, we can see all of the signal details, get a very good look at exactly what signal is coming into the projector. Then we have our 3D and sync settings. Installation is where we'll find all of the lens settings and some of the core processing in the projector. And then we have our lens settings and rotation. For the lens, we have zoom, shift, and focus. And below here, we can enable test patterns and the shutter. Getting more into the processing side of things, we have our digital zoom and digital shift. These can be enabled and disabled. We can also create 5 lens presets that remembers our zoom, shift, and focus position. And then we can adjust the illumination, the brightness of the projector, as well as the scaling mode and our screen size. These last 2 features specifically are going to allow you to shape and scale your input using the projector to really any shape and size you need. It has the frame motorization kit installed. This is where you can affect the calibration, control, and settings of that kit. You'll find some of your main image controls. Including in this is your brightness, contrast, gamma, and saturation. There are also some unique features to pulse in here. For example, the latency allows you to manually dial in the latency for each projector, so that way a multi-projector image can be perfectly timed. You've got the brilliant color, which increases the saturation of the color without affecting the whites. You can set the RGB mode. Also, whether the output resolution is utilizing the pixel shift or not. And lastly, your eco power settings for doing auto off and timed off. Next is test patterns, where we can apply any of the test patterns in the projectors, enable and disable it. You also have the ability to upload a custom test pattern, and then that will be displayed in the list. Color tab is where you adjust the custom and advanced color features of Pulse. This operates on a gamut coordinate system where you choose a mode, and then from there you move your point targets to be within range of the specific color that you want. You also have access to your white value and your white value curve. In the Blend tab, you will find all of the functions for performing blending and soft edge overlap in multi-projector setups. You have radials for enabling each of your functions, as well as showing the grid lines. Here you see we have the ability to change the grid line color for each of our functions. You can mask a portion of your screen in case your feathering or blending has an offset. Blend and blend mask were for your white level. Here you have your black level and your black level mask that you can perform the same functions as the white level. In this area of the configurator, you set the actual pixel values for your overlap, your black level, and your masks. You can see that it's set to 600 pixels by default. That's the standard overlap for a 3:1 ratio to projector blend at HD. You can also set the blend curve, which doesn't change the width of the curve of the blend. It changes the gamma curve of just the overlap. And now you see in this little configurator, this area on the right is your main area that the black level will mostly influence. And on the left is your overlap, which is your blending area. At the bottom here, we have the adjustments for the actual black level. You can adjust them all at the same time. This is usually minimal adjustments, but you can unlink them to adjust each color independently to compensate for color variables, especially when working with laser projectors. And of course, if nothing looks correct, you can reset your different levels and start over. Let's jump to the warp tab. This is going to be a very long segment, but this is where you can enable the warp and also activate warping via the files and software. Once enabled, you can see the two options we have. We have on the left the quick command and on the right the file options. So let's start with the quick commands. Here you can perform some quick warping. So I can come down to the workspace, grab a corner and drag it to quickly change the four-corner warp and see this in real time on the screen. Then you can enable that warp or disable it as well as reset it. Now there's also bow warping or barreling, which helps account for some slight curvature of your surface or the curvature of the lens. This works more with anchor points, pivot points, and here you can see how it works. You can do the sides independently, or you can use the bottom option, which is that symmetrical bow, and then it warps both sides at the same time. Over here on the grid section, you can control the size of the grid and also set the color of your grid lines. All of these functions over here help make it easier to warp your points, especially your four corner, giving you those different snap points you might need. In this warp file section, this is where we're going to be able to perform the much more advanced types of warps. And these options let you choose which file you want to activate on the projector and then move files back and forth between projector and PC. We launch the warp UI. It starts us out with a couple options like what our starting grid size could be and if we want to go full screen before enabling. Now here's the main warp UI. On the left are the controls we'll use to manipulate the warp and warp surface. These first buttons dictate which area of the warp you're going to be doing, such as a full screen, half screen, or corner screen. The next row are the functions that we'll use to perform warp, such as keystone, linearity, our point warp, digital scaling, digital shifting, rotation, and rotation about a point. This last icon is bowing across an entire surface for horizontal and vertical. Let me give you a quick demonstration so you can see what it does, as this is one of the newer functions. And as you can see, this is a ridiculously powerful and robust warping application. Let's look at some of the other options. If you right-click in the workspace, you get some more options. In here, you have a fast preview, an active select and deselect for choosing different points. You can also do a multi-select for grabbing multiple areas at the same time. Some other quick options in here are toggling full screen, turning off the control menu, and then also changing the background to make it easier to see the warp that you're working with. So this is a crazy looking warp, but from here you will utilize point warp or linearity to account for the different problems and issues in your structure. Here we can manually manipulate the points with the arrows and dictate how far each point moves based on a pixel value. Below in our grid, we can add grid points, remove grid points, also reset the grid completely. And one thing you need to watch out for is that resetting the grid doesn't reset the warp on the projector, because that file is in the projector and what you're working with here is a localized file. And the last couple icons are hiding your grid points, revealing them, your undo and redo steps, and then saving the file, as well as resetting the warp card if there's a crash. I'll close these tabs out because here in the file section, right, everything we've done or that you do in that page is stored in the GUI, not in the projector itself. So you need to save and load this file onto the projector and then activate it as the active file in the projector. Jumping into the communications tab, this is where you have control over all aspects of communicating and controlling the projector, including the name and the IR address of the remote. We've got sections for DHCP and static Ethernet addresses, as well as if the built-in Wi-Fi module's in here, you can configure all the settings for the built-in Wi-Fi card. If you have GSM, the cell phone chip card, you can configure that, as well as all of the IR receiver information and your DMX. The licensing section is where you will see the status of different registrations, unlocks, upgrades, and flex codes. And if you have an active license like your GSM module or flex, you'll see it down here in this bottom panel. If you have one of the newer pulse projectors such as the UDM, in this section you will see the add-ons that you might have, such as a laser disto, an external shutter, and a camera built in. And in this section you can control the settings that are available for those different options, such as activating the laser disto or opening and closing that shutter. Once again, the preview tab gives you a active and live view of your current input. There's a section for managing profiles, and then lastly there's the virtual remotes. Let's move up to the top. This computer chip icon is where you can update the firmware. This graph icon is where you can get a refreshed readout of every sensor and measurement inside the projector. And depending on the type of projector you have, this could be a very extensive list. Here you can measure the minimum up to the maximum for each component. Up here in the notifications tab, we're getting status and readout information based on the log file from the projector. You can sort and search through this log file based on the name or the severity level of the notification. There has not been a lens calculator in the software for many years, but the tab is still here. The last section is your service and maintenance tab. In here you have your primary factor reset under maintenance, where you can choose from the different filtered options for resetting the projector. Then after that, based on your security level or your access level through the software to the projector, you can configure a whole host of things, including light output, relamp status, and even digital convergence. Once again, all these options are based on which projector and what kind of access level you have. That concludes it for this overview of Barco's projector toolset. Thanks for watching.